Trying to get some symmetry in the frame.
We're on a road to nowhere. Come on inside. Taking that ride to nowhere. We'll take that ride. I'm feeling okay this morning. And you know, we're on the road to paradise. Here we go, here we go. There's a city in my mind. Come along and take that ride, and it's alright, baby, it's alright. And it's very far away, but it's growing day by day, and it's alright, baby, it's alright. Would you like to come along, and you can help me sing this song, and it's alright, baby, it's alright. There's a city in my mind. Come along and take that ride, and it's alright, baby, it's alright. And it's very far away, but it's growing day by day. It's alright, baby, it's alright. They could tell you what to do, but they'll make a fool of you, and it's alright, baby, it's alright.
Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in. Let me change my setting here. I'm not sure why I did that. Okay, there we go. So today I have a guest whom I discovered on Twitter through a video he made, and I actually learned quite a bit from it because I admit I wasn't too educated on the topic. So this is Mikey. He is an activist and organizer, and he's going to be talking to us about red hail contamination in Oahu. So thank you so much for joining us, Mikey. Do you just first you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love the Talking Heads. Could you send me the cover
Oh,
later? Yeah, so I'm an independent filmmaker and a community organizer. I'm a member of the Oahu Water Protectors and also the uh, relatively new Shutdown Red Hill Mutual Aid Collective. Our socials just went live, and so did our Venmo link. So I'll try to post that maybe in the private chat or the comment section at some point. But yeah, so yeah, I've been organizing for about 7 years at this point, and uh, I started organizing around Red Hill maybe about let's see, it's March now, so 4 or 5, 6 months maybe at this point. We were actually doing work with Sierra Club, who has been working on this issue since the first leak that was, catastrophic in public in 2014, where 27,000 gallons of jet fuel leaked into the soil and groundwater from the Red Hill fuel tanks. And ever since then, Sierra Club was trying to get it shut down, along with other organizations like Hawaii Peace and Justice and other, concerned community advocates and Kanaka Maoli Native Hawaiians in particular, who were warning that this was a disaster waiting to happen. And they lobbied House members, Senate members, City Council, and basically anyone, the Navy, of course, Department of Health, and basically anyone they could to try to get them to do something about the impending crisis that was the deteriorating Red Hill fuel tanks, and nothing of note was done. And then in late 2021, around Thanksgiving time, a catastrophic leak occurred and poisoned thousands of people, many of them military families living in military housing who are on the Navy water lines, but also civilians, military spouses and people living in civilian housing who were living on old Navy housing. So they were still attached to Navy water lines. And so I was actually filming a video for Sierra Club, this Native Hawaiian Mahiai, a farmer, because he lives directly downstream basically from the Red Hill fuel tanks. And his lo'i is fed by the water that comes from the Maunalua Waimalu aquifer that sits just 100 feet below, up to 250 million gallons of toxic jet fuel and marine diesel from
I could
tanks that
not
were built in
believe
World War II.
when I read that. Like,
Yeah, it's
are you fucking kidding me? Like,
oh yeah, it's fucking bananas, right? Yeah. 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 And so I was working on that video about 2 months before any of this, shit started to go down. And we were also we basically got this this Hawaiian word, like a group together, a coalition of people like from Sierra Club, Hawaii Peace and Justice, and other just community organizers and activists and advocates to try to do something about what we already knew was a problem, right? And then several months after we got that hui together, we decided to call ourselves the Oahu Water Protectors and form into an official organization to organize around this issue, to protect our water and to shut down Red Hill. And not too long after we formed that organization, the tanks leaked, and thousands of people were poisoned. And these were children, babies, immunocompromised adults, some who, because of long COVID or residual COVID symptoms, couldn't even smell the water, which many had reported smelled like a gas station. Pets have died. Children may have lifelong health effects that we are only beginning to understand. Entire communities are going to become a landmark test case for what it is like to be exposed for a certain period of time to jet fuel and boat diesel, possibly over an extended period of time. And people are still experiencing the effects of this. The Board of Water Supply, which has been one of the only good state entities in this entire debacle, has, out of abundance of caution, shut down several water shafts, including the Halava shaft, that feeds a lot of water to all of downtown Honolulu. We are slated to expect not water shortages, but water outages in the hot summer. And of course, we know because of climate change, every year it's getting hotter and our streams are getting drier. And because millions of gallons have already been wasted, millions upon millions of gallons per day have been wasted, not just through the Navy fucking contaminating our water, but also from the iterative flushing process that they're using to try to clean these pipes out. When we all know that this fuel is probably going to stick to the pipes. They have flushed some homes like 3 or 4 times at this point, and there is still fuel coming out of these faucets and out of these toilets and shower heads. And they keep trying to do the same thing, expecting different results. And there are families who they've become so acutely sensitive after long exposure now that even the kind of fuel vapor that comes out of these pipes now is making them sick and causing them to break out into rashes. And it's just devastating, as a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, but also as an organizer and just as a human being, going into these homes and crying with these families over what was done to them and what is continuing to be done to them. A lot of these people, I mean, some of them are active duty Navy, and the rest are also military. Many of them are veterans. Like I said before, like some of them are even civilians who were told that they were on board of water supply water lines by the US Navy and by their property manager, and they were fucking lied to. They were told that they were on board of water supply lines when they were actually on Navy water lines. And they were gaslit by the Navy, being like, oh, you're just hypochondriacs, this is part of a mass hysteria where you think you see the people, in Pearl Harbor and Joint Base, Pearl Harbor Hickam and Radford Terrace and Halsey Terrace and Red Hill Mauka, you see them getting sick, and you live all the way in Eva, and just because you used to live on Old Navy housing, you think you're getting sick, and it's just probably something else. And it was clear contamination. And I'm talking about Kapilina Beach homes in particular, which is civilian residence that used to be Old Navy housing. It is falling apart in many other ways, even though it's relatively new homes. But there are tons of reports of them still running the sprinklers, which are continuing to just fire fuel tainted water onto the grass and onto people's lawns and onto fences, and pets are still getting sick from it. kids aren't even parents won't even allow their children to play in the yards whenever they're freshly watered with these sprinklers. And yeah, this flushing process is still ongoing, but they're trying to move people back into their homes now. And understandably, just like with Flint, Michigan, a lot of people are like, "Fuck that!" I don't believe a word you say, and they have every reason not to. Um, the Department of Health just recently tested, I think like a 10% sample of a particular neighborhood, and declared with I think like 95% certainty that they were safe to move back into their homes and use the water. So that's what's being dealt with right now. Um, yeah, and it's been a heavy couple of months.
Yeah. Well, it when I was doing my research, it said that Red Hill actually started in 1940, and it said it was part of a volcano.
Uh, I don't I don't know anything about a volcano, but it's part of this place called so Red Hill is in Kapukaki, and that's the Hawaiian place name for it. And they wanted to build kind of a strategic storage facility for their fuel, especially because of World War II. So they started construction in 1940 and then completed construction in 1943. And they considered it a kind of a engineering marvel because they were able to store so much fuel just like underground, so relatively in their minds secure from any aerial bombardment, right? Which could be a strategic way of cutting off fuel supplies for Air Force and their battleships that were docked in Pearl Harbor. And they also, because it's on a hill, right? It uses the force of gravity to push fuel down to fuel the ships and planes at Pearl Harbor. And so they have been leaking for decades. They are single-walled tanks, and yeah, I mean, they call it like a wonder of the world. But it's Marty Townsend from Sierra, formerly from Sierra Club, now with Earth Justice, describes it as a Frankenstein's monster that we need to kill before it kills all of us. And no truer words could be spoken about this. Daniel K. Inouye, one of our most famous U.S. senators, the prince of imperial pork when it came to billions of dollars in appropriations for military defense contractors and military projects in Hawaii. Even he said in 1978 in an old newspaper editorial that we needed to spend a lot of money to repair these deteriorating Red Hill fuel tanks, and that was back in 1978. Yeah, and these tanks just leak thousands of gallons every year. Some of these tanks are so corroded at the top, they can't even fill them to the top anymore because then they would leak from the top. And it's mind-boggling to me that to all of us really that these tanks still exist. And the only reason that we can really think of is that all life on Oahu, all human and more than human life on Oahu, the entire future of Oahu, an entire indigenous way of life that pre-contact, colonial contact was 100% sustainable. All of that is an acceptable external cost to the U.S. imperialist project. The U.S. is an empire in decline, right? Capitalism is not in its late stage; it's in its end stage, and we all know that the two paths ahead of us are either socialism or barbarism. And this is a prime example of that barbarism at work already, right? Where the US Navy and the US military and Joe Biden's administration are making a calculated decision to put all of our lives at risk, to subject us to the possibility of being a world historic scale of collateral damage to their need to maintain US unipolar world hegemony, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. And that was the entire point of Pearl Harbor in the first place, right? So Pearl Harbor, its place name is Pu'uloa, and it used to be the breadbasket of Oahu in that area. It was so momona, so plentiful with fish, these local ia, oysters. That's why it's called Pearl Harbor, because it had so many pearl oysters.
Wow.
Yeah, and Kalo farms, and then after the Treaty of Reciprocity, where the Hawaiian Kingdom ceded kind of like full use rights to the U.S. Navy to use Pu'uloa as a seaport, particularly for their military and shipping exploits. The first thing the U.S. Navy did was basically just fucking dredge the entire coral reef in Pu'uloa, and then progressively built, all of the heavy industry that comes with bringing an empire to a colony, right? Which is, everything from, toxic laundry detergents to wash Navy clothing and military clothing, to the mercury that's contained within gyroscopes and compasses, to the everyday toxic fuel that ends up spilling into the ocean from the ships, the general pollution that comes with operating those ships, the devastation that comes with having those giant weapons of war in those ports, the sound pollution, the actual pollution. And so in a matter of a few decades, the US Navy turned what was once one of the most plentiful areas on all of the Hawaiian Islands to one of the most contaminated sites on the entire planet. And the EPA, when they were visiting this site, they found dozens of candidates for Superfund site designation. And they actually had to narrow it down to 6 Superfund sites based on categories of contamination, because there were just too many. Because there was also, open burning, open detonation, burying of toxic chemicals. There's just so many ridiculous toxic chemicals in Pearl Harbor and around Pearl Harbor, in the water, in the ground. And there's even a lot of people in Hawaii still don't know this, even people who are pretty clued into the Red Hill issue. There's 5 million gallons of this thick tar-like bunker fuel it's just sitting under the Pearl Harbor Hickam Gate. And it's just mixed in with all of the utility lines, like all the power lines and water lines. And they say because it's so thick, it's so viscous, that, it's not likely to migrate outside of where it is. But any kind of earthquake or possible storm or something could easily change that, I imagine. And the fact that it's there, to begin with, is not acceptable at all. And when it comes down to it, I mean, like, there's also the aspect of militarism, right? With the Pearl Harbor National Memorial and the USS Arizona. And the USS Arizona leaks gallons of some of the most toxic type of World War II era fuel every single day. And National Park Service says that it could continue to leak that way for another 500 years. And, ever since the USS Arizona was sunk during the invasion of Pearl Harbor, it has leaked, and to this day, it's leaked about tens of thousands of gallons of fuel since then. And it's fucking wild, because the Navy's like, oh, this is actually good, because it's forming a natural reef for fish and wildlife to play in. And, and people, they take ferries from the Pearl Harbor Memorial to just marvel at this contaminated site, this ongoing contamination, and to view it as sacred in some way. And it's just so essential to the U.S. military project, right? It's creating this tableau that serves a very specific purpose, which is the United States is not the enemy of the free world. It is the savior of it. It is the only bastion and protector of democracy, which we all know not to be true, but it's a myth that they have to cling to in order to maintain, capitalist world domination over the rest, particularly of the global South. And anyone who even dreams of trying to create a socialist economy in their own country, right? And so they have to continue this narrative, even though the Japanese are their imperial allies now, their imperial capitalist allies, that we are forever beset on all sides by the Asiatic hordes who want to take away our freedoms because they don't like McDonald's, right? and Mickey Mouse. When in reality, the United States, and the United States military in particular, presents the greatest threat in world history to all of humanity, not just through nuclear power and not just through their weapons of war and the fact that they've been genociding millions of people through coups, through subterfuge, through economic sanctions, through actual bombings, through funding neo-Nazis and fascist groups to undermine leftist movements, but just by their sheer level of climate contributions, right? Their emissions, the ways that they create Superfund sites and contamination wherever they go, even when they're not actively trying to kill people. There are hundreds of DoD sites around the world. There's over 800 sites alone just for PFAS contamination in DoD sites, including military housing, everywhere from Kadena in Okinawa to Wuhan, right? And there's just active contamination wherever people live. I spoke to one of the family members who used to live in Pearl Harbor housing, and she told me this is the third instance of military housing where the water was not safe. And she's never going to live in military housing ever again. She told me that. But the fact that, even their own service people have been subjected to this type of treatment, like if you look at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, they went through an even more dramatic level of contamination where they have a place called Baby Heaven, where there are mass graves of babies who died from all types of toxic contaminants in their water. And they're still, the survivors of Camp Lejeune are still trying to fight for restitution and for remediation of that area. And it's obscene, and if more people in the U.S. Imperial Corps knew just what the U.S. military was doing, not just to their own people, but to everyone where they plant their bloody flag, I think the mood of this nation would change. And it needs to, because we're running out of time, right? To do what's necessary, to do what must be done to get to net zero carbon emissions, and just to stop, the genocidal subjection, displacement, and elimination, particularly of indigenous and colonized people, and the working people of the world. And so Oahu Water Protectors has been kind of doing our small part in trying to push that, by forming coalition with internationalist left and indigenous movements for protecting the land and water, but also to prevent and to confront the violences of US imperialism and also capitalism, which is intimately tied to
Absolutely.
fossil fuel extraction, natural gas pipelines like Line 3, and someone in the chat just posted Steven Donziger with the indigenous people of Ecuador and what Chevron did to people in the Amazon. Yes, solidarity with the Ecuadorian people and also Steven Donziger. Steven Donziger has been really amazing at signal boosting the work of Oahu Water Protectors and water protectors all over the world, but also particularly when it comes to attempting to shut down Red Hill and protect our Moanalua Waimalu aquifer. And so, yeah, we can probably talk about the type of organizing and mobilizing and agitating we've been doing in a sec, but just brass.
One thing I wanted to say was, one of the quotes that stood out in some of the articles I was reading, very much to the point of what you said, was a naval spokesperson said, quote, "The facility is vital. Security and regional safety and stability." So, how dare you criticize it? This is an official spokesperson who says this is giving you guys safety.
Yeah.
And, the scariest thing about this, when I was reading about this, is that it's on a naval base, which concerns me because we know how imperialism works, and it makes me trepidatious that much more that it's going to have some kind of ramifications.
Yeah. So, we've been getting some really comical sound bites from some of the highest up people in the Biden administration, including Carlos del Toro, the actual Secretary of the Navy, who, upon his first visit at during a press conference, in response to a reporter asking about how this would affect military readiness when, service people are being poisoned by fuel contaminated water, he said, "It's not the fuel itself that's making them sick. It's the fuel in the water that's making them sick." Yeah. Um, an assistant secretary of the Navy said during the Department of Health contested case hearings in which they were applying for their use permits to be able to use the Red Hill fuel tanks. They were actually asked by, I think, an Earth Justice attorney, like, what do you think is more important to life? Is it water or fuel? And he would not be pinned down to an answer. He said it was a false binary, basically, that it's like sometimes you need fuel and sometimes you need water. And it was such a hard choice for these fucking lizard people, because it's like they may be some of the only the few people on this planet who don't need water to survive, because they're just like,
well, one gives me money, but I don't want to say it because
exactly. It's just,
so I'm just gonna be like,
just, yeah. It's a monstrous behavior based on a monstrous and violent ideology, right? And
I
yeah,
do
so
give people perspective as to the size of what we're talking about here. There are 20 tanks
yes,
at Red Hill, and each tank is about the size of a 25-foot building or 25 story building. So you're talking about 25-story buildings all there, and a water line 100 feet below it.
Yeah.
Sorry. It does not look sturdy. I'm sorry. No, you would not catch me walking through that thing. No.
Yeah.
Not a
Oh
chance.
man. Real quick before I get into I do want to get into the nuts and bolts, like the nitty gritty facts. Could you post the link so I can post it in social media? The link to the live stream.
The link to our show right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put it on Twitter.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll try to find it as I talk. So yeah, there are 20 fuel tanks sitting in Kapukaki in the Red Hill fuel facility. Each of them contain about 12.5 at a maximum million gallons of fuel, although they can never be filled to full capacity, for the simple fact that they're just too corroded at the top to fill them all the way up. And so this is kind of one of the amazing features of it, right? I think 2 of the tanks aren't even operational. They say because they don't need it, but we think it's because they're so structurally compromised that they can't fill them anymore. And so yeah, it's pretty scary. And they have been leaking thousands of gallons of fuel every year. And there was a recent leak that happened where the recent leaks, there was 2 leaks last year where thousands of gallons of fuel leaked into the water or into the water lines. And it's kind of incredible that when this first happened, the Navy basically gaslit all of their own service people, saying that the water was safe to drink, they were on top of it, and that it wasn't as serious as they were claiming. Meanwhile, people were being admitted to the ER constantly with some of the worst symptoms you can imagine all at once, like constant vomiting, diarrhea, exhaustion, rashes, fatigue. Some people have hypothyroidism now. I know of one 16-year-old girl who has these violent, terrifying seizures that are just heartbreaking to witness. I have a friend who I now organize with, who is part of the Shutdown Red Hill Mutual Aid Collective. She was admitted to the ER 3 times. Another one of our new members to Oahu Water Protectors, his son he had to watch him in ambulance, and he had such trouble breathing, and his face was just so swollen and inflamed that he couldn't even see his eyes, and the EMTs had to jab him with 2 EpiPens, just to try to get him to breathe because they thought it was an allergic reaction. And this guy Xavier, he was telling me, like, that he wasn't sure whether he was watching his son die right in front of his eyes, and this other person, the mother of the person who has these violent constant seizures, she said the same thing. Like, there's a video that is in the news now where she's in the living room filming as her 16-year-old daughter, like, you can hear the EMT saying that her pulse is like really weak, and they've attached her with an emergency defibrillator in their living room, and luckily her eyes flitter like just before they're about to shock her. And that mother too, same thing, was like, she says something to her grandpa, basically, just says his name, and glances at the kids, their siblings who are standing in the hallway, because she was so afraid that she thought that she was going to witness her own daughter die, and she didn't want her own kids to see that. So it's just incredibly fucked up. And the fact that the U.S. Navy is actually suing our state government in order to stall the process of the emergency order that was issued by the Department of Health to completely defuel the tanks. Basically the Department of Justice and the U.S. Navy, and all under the auspices of the Biden administration, are fighting through the legal system, and just through sheer dint of their military might and the authority that comes with it, to keep what is still about 180 million gallons of fuel in those tanks that are still to this day just constantly leaking. And there could be another catastrophic failure or another catastrophic error any day. It could be happening right now, and we wouldn't know about it for days, because that's how the Navy goes. That's how they operate. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah, on that note is, are you familiar with 1881A?
Sorry, no, what?
1881A, the
No, what's that?
legislation. So what it is it comes from a place called Libby, Montana, and essentially they had toxicity in the air, and due to environmental emergency, they all got Medicare for all. Everyone, instantly. Now, because of a pandemic, because of what you guys are going through, Biden could absolutely sign an executive order and give every single person in our country, immigrant or not, regardless of state, all of us 100% healthcare coverage. He could. We are actually taking it to the, we're working with human rights lawyers, and we are filing a grievance with the United Nations because he's not. So definitely, keep that in mind. Also, when you're talking to these people who have health problems, they're entitled to get that shit covered. Hands down.
Underneath 1881A?
1881A.
Thank you.
Yep.
So you're fighting to kind of like extend that coverage, is what you're saying.
To the entire country. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, so basically kind of like a legislative pathway to Medicare for all? Or not even legislative? Or is it legislative?
That's
or
exactly what
could
it would
this be done by executive order?
It could be done by executive order, or done permanently otherwise. But
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, how many lives would that change? You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's precisely why it's going to be an uphill battle, because we all know that, like, these fucking capitalist ghouls don't want that to happen, because it would even long term be profitable, right? For the U.S. to have Medicare for all, because people's health would improve and productivity would improve, et cetera, and
Right.
less money would be going to the hands of these awful insurance companies, and the private healthcare industry, but people like Biden and Pelosi and all of those other folks are completely bought and paid for by those very entities. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy to forget that the president is the commander in chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. He could tomorrow, if he wanted to, just be like, "Hey, shut down Red Hill. I'm the commander in chief. You do what I say." And
Absolutely.
he knows that this is happening, and it's a conscious choice just not to do it, and it's unconscionable. I hope we are able to build the political pressure to get him to make an order like that, and that's what we're working on doing. Um, so let's see. There's a question. What is the bedrock like around the Hawaiian Islands? Is it really porous? That makes a difference how fast the poison spreads. Yeah, so I mean, honestly, there's a lot we don't know about the aquifer and how fuel moves in it, right? Because fuel never should be there in the first place. But what's amazing, yeah, about our ecological cycle on the islands and particularly the island of Oahu is this aquifer is lined with porous lava rock, and the water trickles down through, this amazing like natural filtration system, and we have some of the best, cleanest water in the world. I was born and raised here. I'm not native Hawaiian. I'm an Asian settler, fourth and fifth generation, Korean on my mom's side, Japanese on my dad's side, and you know, I love this place and I love the water. I love the rain. That's one of my favorite things here. The rain isn't like the rain in Hawaii in any other place of the world I've ever been to.
No, it's
And
not.
the water isn't either. Um, you can just open your tap if you're not living in an affected area and just drink straight from it, and it tastes great. And the fact that that's under threat is just, it's obscene. And here's the other thing: is like, going back to what you were saying about how they need Red Hill for like national security and for our safety, right? I mean, that's patently bullshit. Obviously, we all know that the United States military doesn't protect us. It doesn't protect anyone. All it protects is capital, right? And the interests that allow for continued capital accumulation and the immiseration of colonized people all around the world. But even the basic argument without any kind of Marxist analysis falls apart, because it's like, we're all begging them to shut down Red Hill, and they're like, no, we need Red Hill to protect you from China, right? And to protect you from Russia and to protect you from the DPRK. And it's like, well, last I checked, China didn't poison our water. Last I checked, Russia did not poison our water. The Russian Federation isn't parking gallons of toxic fuel right above our sole source aquifer. That's the United States Navy. And if literally anyone else except the US military poison even a fraction of the people in a US occupied territory, which this is, it's illegally occupied by the United States, they would be, talking about what kind of charges they'd be facing in The Hague, right? Not whether or not they should shut down Red Hill. And the fact that this is a war crime, right? This is nothing short of a war crime. And it's a real testament also to the United States level of unaccountability on the world stage that they even passed, the Hague Invasion Act, where they grant themselves full right to invade the Netherlands if anyone from the United States is tried for war crimes in The Hague. So I mean, it's like, it's just incredible how unaccountable the U.S. military is, even to the international community. Getting another question here about possible war in Ukraine, and the U.S. is no real threat to China. I would slightly contest that. I think they're less of a threat than they think, or that generally people in the United States think. They still, I mean, as long as the United States is still nuclear capable, they present a threat to the entire planet. But like a wise man once said, the U.S. is a paper tiger, right? And that's becoming clearer and clearer every single day. So when it comes to things like the war, the ongoing conflict in Russia and Ukraine, and the ginned up Cold War with China. the United States is constantly trying to justify their, increasingly untenable and unsustainable and unacceptable presence in places like Hawaii. But even in the settler colony that is the quote unquote United States of America and the continental United States. And they just have to keep, because the United States is so leveraged, their economy is sitting on, like, they're not even betting on futures anymore, or derivatives of derivatives, or collateralizations of debt. It's not even betting on future imagined earnings. We're now, our economy is now shifting to the imaginary itself with NFTs, right? Like that's how far we've reached the frontier of what's possible with US capitalism, where we are trying to shift our economy into the unreal, where even the ownership of a said property is imaginary, which is fucking bonkers. But I mean, that is the illogical logic of capitalism, right? And the suicidal, unsustainable nature of it. It makes sense for the capitalist project because there's nowhere else left to go, other than to escalate conflicts to hot wars, because there's money to be made there, at least in the short term. But even that, they're playing by the same Cold War playbook that worked for them, with balkanizing and ultimately helping to accelerate the collapse of the USSR. They succeeded in destroying various social projects all over the global South, but it's not working as well as it used to anymore, because one part and because of China creating their own sovereign types of financing and technological systems, where they don't have to rely on the US and and won't be completely decimated by sanctions the way the capitalist Russia is right now, in many ways, because they're still tied to the US financial system and to US technology, and to US trade. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what's going on, even on the ostensible left in the US, about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. That this is not a war that started, this is not a conflict that started the moment you started paying attention to it. It started, at least 8 years ago, and is based on decades of struggle. The Azov Battalion and other, right sectors, Svoboda, all of these neo-Nazi, fascist, white supremacist, anti-Semitic, anti-Roma, homophobic militants are the ones leading the charge in Donetsk and Luhansk, who declared independence from Ukraine after the right-wing coup that was staged by the United States and NATO in 2014. And ever since then, there's been violent, genocidal militant incursions from Ukrainian white nationalists into Donetsk and Luhansk. And it's actually surprising that it's taken Russia this long to intercede in areas that declared independence right on their border, of places that are majority ethnic Russian, right? Ukraine and Russia means the borderlands. Historically speaking, they have much more in common with Russia than the fucking European Union or the United States or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I have no idea what the North Atlantic Treaty Organization was doing in violent incursions in Libya, right? That's not the North Atlantic. Or in Serbia, or in former Yugoslavia, or in Ukraine, right? And tying this back to Red Hill, it's just like none of this is justifiable, and all of these narratives that they've been crafting for themselves, they're still holding up to some extent, because we've all been raised under capitalist pedagogy to believe that we're the good guys, and that everyone, we're trained like Pavlov's dog to acknowledge a new enemy whenever we are ordered to. Like just less than a year ago, it was China for Uyghur genocide that was not occurring, where the primary source was fucking Adrian Zenz and the Falun Gong. So basically right-wing death cults that were peddling this delusion, and it really reveals how little that was actually about anyone in the United States caring about human rights, when's the last time you heard about concentration camps in Xinjiang, right? Never. Nothing anymore. It's because it's not of use to the State Department right now. And now we're talking about, pity the poor nation of Ukraine. And it's like, well, how did Ukraine get this way, right? Well, part of it was Stepan Bandera, who many of people within groups like the Azov Battalion model their entire ideology around, where giant banners of his face and his message are plastered in front of shopping malls, and where the Ukrainian government has hailed him in official parliamentary declarations as a Ukrainian hero, and he was a collaborator with the Nazis and killed hundreds of thousands of Jews, Poles, and Romani people. And ever since then, after the Cold War, NATO has been trying to expand. And in the 90s, they promised that they wouldn't expand 1 more inch east. But they broke that promise with Yeltsin, after installing him into a place of power where he could, from within, illegally dismantle the Soviet Socialist Republic. They have dangled NATO in front of Russia ever since, and it was all based on a lie. And now, they've been threatening to park nuclear missiles right at Russia's doorstep, right at the doorstep of the Russian Federation. And I've been telling people, like, let's think about that for a second, right? If any country that was led in large part by neo-Nazis in their own military came to Ottawa and then parked one ICBM pointed directly at the eastern seaboard of the United States. I mean, the United States, in a heartbeat, even if they got wind of it, they would nuke all of the Asian continent, no question, right? So when it comes down to Russia, Ukraine, or China, or Red Hill, we see that everything that the U.S. has casted about its geopolitical foes and rivals, and all of its colonial holdings and the way that they treat the indigenous people of those lands, it's all projection. It's smoke, mirrors, lies, and projection. And they are not our protectors. They are our oppressors. And it's probably, and this is why Red Hill really needs to be not just in the national conversation, but in the international conversation, because it gives words to that lie, right? It's such a bold-faced truth that water is life, and that anyone who threatens that water, anyone who poisons that water, either through malice or negligence or malicious negligence, has committed a war crime. And that a country like that, a military like that, a political project like that cannot continue to operate in the way that it is. For the sake of all of humanity, for the sake of future of all life on this planet, we need to not only shut down Red Hill, but we need to shut down the war machine of U.S. empire. And I think one of the things that the U.S. military realizes is if they give up Red Hill, that opens the door to a lot of other things that they may have to give up in the future, because we are all building an internationalist movement that is decolonial, that is hopefully socialist, and that, the project of our collective liberation, the project of providing, everyone to each according to their need and from each according to their ability, the project of land back, of land return to the indigenous people of all lands whose lands were taken away and defiled, and whose lands they were dispossessed of, whose waters they were dispossessed of, that return is, that climate, averting climate disaster and heading into climate resilience is contingent upon land return. All of those connected and equally essential projects fly in direct contradiction, in dialectical opposition to the U.S. capitalist project. And that's where Red Hill ties in with the rest of the world. Sorry, that was kind of a long rant.
No, I mean, I wasn't going to interrupt. I did, throughout my research, I did see something happen yesterday where they stated that 3 more areas were considered safe to start drinking their water again. Do you think people should like trust that?
So, I mean, I'm not someone who lives in affected housing yet. Hopefully never. But so I don't feel like it's my place to tell people whether their water is safe or not, right? That's unfortunately a decision that they have to make for their own families. But I will tell you that every single family I've spoken to, and that's well over, a dozen, they will never trust a single thing the U.S. Navy says ever again. And one thing I can opinionate on is rightfully fucking so. Yeah, and many especially colonized peoples struggling for liberation from U.S. imperialism and the yoke of U.S. oppression, they've never trusted the U.S. military because they've never been done right by the U.S. military. They've only been hurt by them, yeah, I mean, all of the contamination, besides capitalist enterprise from sugar plantation white supremacist capitalists who overthrew the sovereign nation of Hawaii. All of that contamination, aside from that, is the U.S. military, all over the Hawaiian Islands. Not just Oahu. There. It's sometimes when you're living in Oahu, it feels like you're living on the Death Star. We have military ships and helicopters flying through our airspace, sometimes incredibly dangerously low, all the fucking time. But
I noticed that when I was there.
Yeah, especially during RIMPAC, though, the Rim of the Pacific Games, where they invite dozens of countries to come bomb the shit out of Hawaii's land and water, and to train them in home invasion scenarios, to kill people and subject people in their own colonies or in their own countries. And it's horrifying because some of these structures that they built, like in Pohakuloa, which is on Hawaii Island, Mokuokeawe, they build these buildings to the architecture and even to some extent the aesthetic of the visiting countries, so they can do a proper home invasion. And it's things like that if you just take out the word U.S., right? You tell anyone who lives in the U.S. Imperial Core that this is what's happening, and you just don't say it's the United States doing it, they'd be like, that's abominable. I would never let that happen where I live.
Oh, totally.
But it is. It's happening everywhere. And I think that's just what we need to start doing. I think maybe on a jokey social media level, is just be like, China's doing this, Russia's doing this, Kim Jong-un is doing this, Cuba's doing this. And then just be like, actually, I'm joking. That's the United States.
Mikey, I've tried that. And let me tell you how 15,000 shitlibs shared the post in earnest, and it backfired.
Oh Lord, yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, we don't need to deal with radical liberalism. We don't need to deal with radical centrism, really, unless it's a case-by-case basis where we feel called to. As organizers and as activists and as people who are trying to move people in person and on social media, we just need to reach out to the people who are asking the right questions and coming at it in good faith. People who are ready to hear something, even if their spoken words may say something else. And it's kind of hard to catch the vibe, right, with someone, whether they're coming at you with good faith or they're just trolling you or playing devil's advocate because that's what they like to do. But just in my own personal experience, been able to change a lot of minds about the U.S. military presence here, and the history of U.S. colonial violence that's been committed not just here but all over the world. And I think more than ever, people are ready to hear it because the contradictions are intensifying to such an incredible degree that people are seeing it even with the ways that the United States has so sufficiently indoctrinated and programmed us to have knee-jerk reactions to deny the reality that's sitting right in front of our faces. And people in Hawaii in particular are ready to have these types of conversations that they never would have been ready to have even 5 months ago.
Absolutely. I do want to see if I can play this video from my Twitter, the video that made me hit you up. Let me see if it will allow me. Okay. I think I have it. Okay. So this is when I first heard of Mikey, because I was scrolling and I saw this video. This is him speaking.
Senator, can you just definitively declare without any equivocation that you do indeed support the permanent shutdown of Red Hill?
I am doing that through the bills that I said I'm going to be focused on.
Yeah, but just like a simple yes or no, or just say, do you support shutting down Red Hill permanently? Yes or no?
Basically, we're getting there. It requires a lot of people to come with me just because.
Sorry, I just very, very simple question. Do you support shutting down Red Hill?
No offense.
I'm just asking you, although they have been asking you since 2015 whether you support shutting down Red Hill. Do you or do you not support permanently shutting down Red Hill? Yes or no?
I can tell you that I am working very hard to shut down Red Hill. There are many, many steps and many people to convince, and I'm doing it.
So you
So
support
I'm
shutting
doing
down
it
Red Hill
through
permanently?
the channels and steps that I think will actually get us there. That will actually get us there.
So you support shutting down Red Hill
It
permanently?
is not, it's not even, I'm sorry, signing on to a bill to do it, it's not going to get us there. So I am doing everything I can to get us there. And I've been very clear with it.
Okay, so first of all, you're a freaking badass. You did not give up. You're like, listen, yes or no. Like,
Yeah. Oh
biggest
man, that was.
question ever.
Yeah. I like bird dogging people. It's rare when you get an opportunity to do it here, just because our most powerful people, they don't spend a lot of time here, right? And yeah, like my heart was pumping out of my chest because this is probably the only time I would ever be able to do this with someone as high up as a U.S. senator like Mazie Hirono. And yeah, a little bit of context behind this. This is her last term, and we did a lot of basically cyberbullying certain legislators who have a history of being in the pocket of the military-industrial complex. And through our organizing, our positive organizing, and through some public shaming, we were able to get people who were just egregiously silent on the issue to come forward as a congressional delegation to call for the defueling and shutting down of Red Hill. And Mazie Hirono was the lone holdout in the congressional delegation, which she normally runs in lockstep with. I wanted to get her on the record, not just to say shut down Red Hill, not just to co-opt our talking points, but to say that she was calling for the permanent shutdown of Red Hill. And in that video, she never says those words. In a follow-up interview with a local news station, she doesn't say those words. And I wanted to hear those words come out of her mouth because I knew it was what she didn't want to say. She didn't want that soundbite because defense contractors like Lockheed Martin have donated tens of thousands of dollars to her over her political career. And I had to wonder, it's like, this is such a unifying bipartisan issue. It's an apartisan issue because even pigs and fascists need to drink water, right? Why is she not coming on the right side of this? This is so easy. This is a critical part of her legacy, right? She just put out a memoir,
Especially she's not going up for re-election. Like,
exactly.
What are you trying to?
So here's what my thinking is. The reason she's not saying the words, I support unequivocally the permanent shutdown of Red Hill, is because I think she may be having a future, possibly. I'm just speculating here. None of this could happen, but it makes sense. A future career lobbying for the Chamber of Commerce through their Military Affairs Council, or as a lobbyist for Lockheed Martin, or a consultant for Lockheed Martin.
Makes sense.
You know, that's the only logical explanation to me. It could be anything, honestly. It could just be that she's bought in hook, line, and sinker
Well, I
to the
looked in
military
her
narrative.
records, her donations and stuff, and I couldn't find anything that jumped out at me. That's the first thing I did because follow the money always. But I didn't see anything that jumped out at me. So I think what you're saying is incredibly plausible.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you look at Open Secrets, and look at her entire political career and her top donors, yeah, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Base Systems, General Dynamics, they're all right at the top, including another company. It's a local mom and pop imperialist shop, called Navitech, also known as Martin Defense Group, and the CEO of Navitech. Donated tens of thousands of dollars to her, but even more money to Brian Schatz, the quote unquote climate hawk, right? And he's taken almost as much money as Macy Hirono from, military defense contractors. And, he's returned the favor by appropriating hundreds of, he's returned the favor by appropriating billions of dollars in military park projects for the U.S. military industrial complex. Anyway, yeah, the fact that these people are all in U.S. empire's pocket, I think, is largely an explanation for why they were so silent for months when thousands of their own constituents were being poisoned by the water they were drinking and showering in. Like, I mean, how can you call yourself even a progressive, let alone a human being who has the power to change things like this?
Because they can
When
go
you
to the
hear
store and buy case after case of bottled water.
Yeah, I mean, when you, as a U.S. fucking senator, are hearing that pregnant women and babies and dogs are getting poisoned by their water directly from the U.S. Navy, with no question as to who's at fault, and you stay silent on that, or you don't use your, nearly 300,000 follower Twitter account that you're on all the fucking time, to the point where I don't even know when you do your job, that you're not just blasting that Twitter account with what's going on with Red Hill and they need to shut it down nonstop. Like that is very illuminating to me about what someone's real priorities are as a legislator. That their true core constituency lies not with the people, but with the companies who fund their campaigns. And Yeah, so that's another thing. I mean, we can get into Navitech and how they were recently arrested. The CEO was arrested for bilking the PPP program out of I think like $12 million for fraudulent reporting of their employees and how much losses they were expected to have over the next financial cycle, and also for double triple dipping attempting into the PPP program, and how in the charging document from the DOJ, there is a US senator who was on the banking committee that Martin claims was trying to help fast track the loan application for the CPB bank that was reviewing his application for a PPP loan, and how just coincidentally, Brian Schatz, up until the year after Martin was indicted, was on the Senate Banking Committee, and is now ironically not on there anymore, but is on the Ethics Committee. Yeah, and no reporters are asking why that is. No one has directly asked if that is Brian Schatz in the charging document because they're not named. But I think somebody fucking should, because it is at the very least ethically questionable, and possibly, if it is him, an ethical violation. That is at the very least grounds for censure. But yeah, I mean, there's just a testament to who are the people who are supposed to be protecting us, or that claim to be protecting us, who we never could rely on and never can in the future rely on to keep us safe, to keep our water safe. Only we can keep us safe, right? Only community can keep ourselves safe. And that's one thing that we are trying to demonstrate through our organizing, through like mutual aid, and through organizing community, and to giving the community, affected community, resources and information and the tools they need to organize themselves, right? is to kind of deprogram ourselves from this capitalist, individualist, colonial mindset that we are all just out here to lift our own bootstraps up and fuck everybody else. I just, if you're having a hard time, you're just not, your grind set is off, you're just not hustling hard enough. And we're all we're talking about is our freedom, right? Our freedom to be poor, our freedom to be hungry, our freedom to not have health care, our freedom to not have an affordable quality education, our freedom to have clean water, to not have clean water, right? And it's like when it comes down to like, if that's what freedom is under the US capitalist project, then fuck freedom, right? What is freedom even? It's a relatively new concept. What isn't a new concept? What is a concept that has an ethos and a cultural a concept and a value system that has been integrated into economic system that has sustained us for thousands of years? Is the concept not of individualism, but of communalism, of us all being bound to one another. That's more valuable than any illusory notions that doesn't even track philosophically in terms of the illusion of individual. There are no individuals, right? We know that. Even modern science is getting closer to understanding that. We're a community. Everything we do to ourselves and to each other, it affects us all. And an injury to one is an injury to all. And in Olelo Hawaii, in the Hawaiian language, vai is water, and vai vai is wealth. So you're not wealthy without water, without access to clean, abundant water. Kanavai is law, but literally it translates to relating to water. Vai ko inoa is what is your name, or literally who is your name. So you can't even say who you are without acknowledging that we're all water, and it's so beautiful to me. But also, tying that with the old wobbly slogan, an injury to one is an injury to all. If we are water and water is us, then an injury to water is an injury to us all. And that's why we got to protect it, because water is us and we are water, and we got to protect our water like we would someone we love, right? And that's why we got to shut down Red Hill.
I digress, but I know I'm gonna get so much shit if I don't ask this. Has Tulsi Gabbard helped at all?
Okay. Tulsi Gabbard is a fucking mask-off fascist. That's all I'll say about. No, I got plenty more to say about Tulsi Gabbard. Actually, she pretended to be a progressive when it was politically convenient. The one courageous thing she did was defend Bernie Sanders, who also, I gotta say, he has not said word one about this issue. He once retweeted one of my videos of the Kupuna getting arrested, which was great for the cause. But then he somehow was convinced to unretweet it, and he hasn't said a single thing about Red Hill, and is likely not to ever, unfortunately. But he definitely clears the very, very low bar that is Tulsi Gabbard. She is an opportunist. I don't believe a word she says anymore. She isn't even anti-war. I don't know why there is such a large contingent of the nominal left that thinks she's anti-war. She's literally active duty right now. She belongs. Okay, all of this is just my opinion. Please don't sue me for slander. Parody,
I said all this many times. You're good.
Yeah, I mean, she was raised in a Hindutva pro-Modi cult, and Modi is, he's ethnically cleansed Muslims. That was his claim to fame. And if you want to talk about Tulsi Gabbard being a progressive, just see what she has to say about immigrants recently. See what she has to say about violence, war making and warmongering when it comes to anyone who is brown. It's a very different conversation, right? She pretends to be anti-imperialist, but she is anything but. And so, like anyone who still likes Tulsi is like, you're not playing with a full deck, and you better wise up, because she's actively rebranding as a Republican. I think she spoke at yeah.
No, I've said for 2 fucking years she's running 2024 as a Republican, and she's gonna do well. That's the sad part.
God, I hope not. And I hope she doesn't do it in Hawaii. But anyway, yeah. Oh God. it's so disgusting.
I was just
Yeah, I mean,
she has this, even her disgusting offensive tweets have the hibiscus and say aloha, so that makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
And she talks about the environment sometimes and stuff, and evokes Hawaiian culture into that. But I was wondering if she actually did do anything environmentally, even though she's not a rep anymore. That doesn't mean she can't help you guys. So I guess the answer is no.
I mean, she hasn't been at the forefront of this. No legislator has. And that's a thing we gotta kind of like, I think, as a Marxist-Leninist, we need to disabuse ourselves of the notion of is that any elected representative, no matter how progressive or no matter how many times they call themselves a socialist and then shit on actually existing socialism and then promotes, the quote-unquote socialism of what are basically white ethno-states. No shade, but also shade. We need to disabuse ourselves of the notion that we're all going to get free through the electoral system, through the executive, through the Senate, through the House, through any part of this overextended, collapsing empire. This is all going to come from people power. And I have always been concerned ever since, I kind of like started to gravitate away from electoral politics and electoral organizing, that a lot of these, movements, they end up getting sucked in to electoral politics, and people end up getting drained and disillusioned because the only good candidates who run have zero chance of winning because they're good candidates. The system isn't designed for that, particularly the legislative system and the electoral system. It's rigged, and we need to leave the casino. And the only way we're all going to get free is through revolution, and that only comes through people power. It doesn't come through the ballot. I'm not fully against strategic forays into electoral politics, especially on the local level, because you can soften the soil for big changes to happen, important changes to happen. But I also think that as far as U.S. electoral politics is concerned, historically speaking, it's been proven time and time again that the U.S. electoral system is the graveyard of all left and revolutionary political movements.
Absolutely. Everything in history that has ever changed monumentally has been by marching in the streets and movements and civil rights, gay rights, women's right to vote. None of that shit happened at the ballot box. So people need to just accept that you have no saviors. It's not going to happen. And speaking of which, I have a poll I made tonight on my Twitter that asked just that. How do you think we would get Medicare for all? By voting by direct action or by a combination of both? Please take that poll and share it, everyone who's watching, because I'm going to go over it this next weekend at their forum. So
can you do another poll about whether people think that Tulsi is a fascist?
Oh my God, dude, you don't understand how bad people come for me.
Oh no, I know. Yeah. She's definitely got her own hive of true believers that
Tulsels, people call them.
Yeah, that's right. Oh Lord. But I mean, when it comes to shit like Red Hill, and even U.S. militarism, she's actually not nearly as bad as Brian Schatz and Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, and Mazie Hirono and Ed Case. And some of them are on the right side of this now. Oh yeah, so like a couple days after, she actually signed Sierra Club's Red Hill pledge that calls for the permanent shutdown of Red Hill. So we'll see. It's a great step in the right direction, and direct action and bird dogging gets the goods sometimes, more often than most other things. With notwithstanding organizing, that's what gets the goods long term, right? Yeah, I mean, it's fun to dunk on these imperialist running dogs, and to force them into a position to co-opt your talking points, and to take up your cause as their own, for their own political survival. But it's much more important to do more than just say no, right? do more than just say shut it down. We have to demonstrate what we want to build in its place. That's even more important, I would argue, than just saying what needs to go. And, of course, all this shit needs to go. But in order to build the type of people power, this, the movement that we need and the numbers that we need, we have to demonstrate to the people, not just by serving the people, but by living our values for one, but also trying to build that world in parallel to U.S. capitalist empire that parts the clouds, that shows a way to a better possible world, the one we all need and the one we all deserve, and that does involve mutual aid. It involves organizing, but it also involves art. It involves collectively dreaming. It involves generative, positive, hopeful conversations, despite all of the terrible shit we're going through, to dare to dream of a better world, because that's what the capitalists don't want, is for us to be able to dream again, to dream about what's possible, to dream about getting what we need, not just to survive, but to thrive, right? And a lot of people who are rightfully cynical and disillusioned and depressed on the left, I see a lot of my friends and comrades, just collapsing into despair and apathy. And I will never blame anyone for that. But it is reactionary, right? And we need you. We need you in this fight. And all of the data is against us, right? All of the trends. We may already be too late because of cascade effects and knockoff effects of climate change. But we have to keep, or at least I'm going to keep moving like there's still hope. And I believe there is. And the thing about hope is that it's not just an attitude or a mindset. It is a practice, right? There we go. Hope is a discipline, as Miriam Kaba has shared so beautifully. We have to act with hope and organize with hope and engage with people with a revolutionary optimism, so that we can get other people to believe that things are within their power to change on a global scale for good and for our collective liberation. Even when the existing material conditions don't reflect its possibility, because we can get there, but only if we believe we can the entire time. And I'm not talking about manifesting, but I'm talking about, believing in your cause enough to fight for it. And, even if we are too late, I want to fight for the ashes, I think it might have been Brett O'Shea who said something like this in Revolutionary Left Radio. Like, we should be fighting for palliative care for what's left of the world, even if we are too late. But again, I don't think we are. We're not too late with Red Hill, but we're almost too late, right? And we just got to be doing everything we can, whether you live in Hawaii or not, to demand the shutdown of Red Hill. And that is going to be, require people taking to the streets, especially since COVID numbers are coming back down. But yeah, it's like, we need to be doing more than asking. We need to be demanding and forcing the shutdown Red Hill. If you, protest means nothing if there isn't an or else, right? We need to be getting at some point, hopefully, to the point where we are withholding our labor, where we are withholding the keys to the economy, contingent upon shutting down Red Hill. I don't know when that's going to be, when we'll all be organized enough for that, but that's what it's going to take, probably, unless Biden finds a conscience and, just makes an order as commander-in-chief. I'm not holding out for that, but, hoping that he might.
I want every single person watching to watch my interview with Steven Donziger last week, because I asked him specifically, given what's happened to you, do you feel that the people in power are stronger than the power of the people? And I want everyone to listen to his answer. I'm going to cry when I think about it, but just listen to it. Because if anyone can answer the way he answered, let that be your guide right there. Take it from him. But
yeah, and I've been saying a lot, in terms of how we all get free, right? It's people power, not the people in power.
absolutely. So, Mikey, before we go, I definitely want you to, do you have any websites? And of course, put them in the comments as well. But do you want to give any websites or mutual aid or anything like that?
Yeah, if y'all want to follow, are the majority of folks on Twitter, or are they on Instagram
Mostly,
too?
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, yeah. So please follow us. I follow Oahu Water Protectors at Oahu WP, OAHUWP. There's also a brand new Twitter page for Shutdown Red Hill Mutual Aid Collective called SDRH Mutual Aid, at SDRH Mutual Aid. And we have two big mutual aid projects lined up already. So if you hit up that page, give us a follow, please, and also if you can afford to, please consider donating to our Venmo, which is Shutdown Red Hill Mutual Aid, and that will help to fund our efforts to serve the most affected communities in this situation, but also to build collective power and to build bridges of understanding and solidarity between what is majority military families and with other community members who live outside of it, including Kanaka Maoli, the indigenous people of this land, who have always and continue to protect the land and water, particularly from the people who threaten its continued flourishing, which is to say, the United States of America.
You are amazing, Mikey. Like, you're so
Oh.
fucking beautiful. I just want to take you and stick you in my pocket, and then when I'm sad or something, be like, I need a dose of Mikey. Like, you're just wonderful. You really are.
Oh,
You are
likewise. This has been a great savage joy to be on your show.
Well, I'm sure I will have you back in the future, because this is, ever evolving, not just this, but also, Ukraine, Russia, all of those things which you're so educated on. So thank you all so much for watching. Please follow Mikey, donate if you can to their mutual aid. Upcoming, I can't announce one thing I'm doing Tuesday because they haven't announced it yet, and I said they could do it themselves. So this morning I interviewed someone pretty amazing, but the interview is going to premiere on next week's forum, so I'm not going to say who it was. Next week's forum, 3 fucking days, all for National Medicare for All. We are going to have 3 days of panels, musicians, cameo videos, everything like that. And we're going to have panels on environment and healthcare, racial disparities in healthcare, mental health, disability rights, panels on freaking everything with healthcare workers, activists, the whole 9, 3 days. And I'll be your hostess with the mostest for many of them, so y'all better show up. But and Monday, postmortem breakdown with me, Logan, and Andrew. And Tuesday, I will be joining Graham Elwood during the day. So the drill. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll post all that shit there. But again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much, Mikey. And before I forget, feel free to use any clips from this or anything you want. It's your show too. So
Cool, thanks. One last thing. Never for money, always for love. Cover up and say goodnight. Say goodnight.
Aww. I've never had someone say to me on the air.
I miss karaoke. COVID took that away from me largely, so. Oh yeah, I'm karaoke computer on Twitter. You can or karaoke computer. But in order to understand the pun, you have to pronounce it correctly. So karaoke computer.
Yes. Or is it also Radiohead?
Yeah.
Or oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I get it.
Karaoke computer.
All right. Well, thank
This
you
was a lot
so
of
much.
fun. Thanks so
Best
much.
of luck with everything, and
Really
please
appreciate
reach
it.
out if you ever need anything or need to share anything or what have you.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Take
Aloha.
care.